Let's welcome back to MidPoint. The executive director of the National Security Network, John Bradshaw, joins us. John, before the break, you mentioned former U.S. Ambassador to Venezuela, Otto Reich, who was on the show earlier today, and he was very uncomplimentary of the president's move here, blasting it in so many different ways. And that does bring up what a lot of people are saying here. I think he spoke for a lot of critics of this, saying that despite the fact that things haven't worked in 54 years, we gave away too much, that Raul Castro is using America at this point, and that there is absolutely no way for us, America that is, to keep any greater handle on human rights violations now than we were a couple of years ago, simply because we're going to be there. Isn't that a fair assessment, though, and a fair criticism?
With respect to Ambassador Reich, and I understand his views as a Cuban American and someone who served his country for many years in the State Department, I disagree with him on this issue. I think one of the major outcomes of having the embargo and restrictions on Cuba is that it has given the Castro brothers an excuse to blame everything on the United States. And if we start moving towards normalization, as I said, it will be a slow process. They will no longer have that excuse. The Cuban people will see what they've done to destroy the economy there. I don't think we gave away too much. I know some people have been saying, well, we caved in to the Castros, to the regime. But of course, this has been in the works for a long time. President Obama talked about this, making this kind of opening to Cuba, even when he was a candidate in 2007. So it's not about doing all this just to get Alan Gross freed. As a matter of fact, Alan Gross was more of an impediment to moving this forward. It might have happened sooner.
Well, isn't it fair to say that Alan Gross was really a very small part of this, if you think about it, because there was a 20-year American spy that was in jail in Cuban prisons, plus also there were 3 convicted Cuban spies who were responsible for the deaths of 3 American citizens and 1 U.S. resident. We sent them back to Cuba. So in many ways, we sent killers back to Cuba in this. That's not going to sit well with a lot of people.
I understand that people have negative reactions to that. I think overall, you have to look at this opening overall and see what the longer-term benefits are to the United States. This will enhance our national security because in the region we have been an outlier. The rest of Latin America has long wanted to be open with Cuba, has been more open. Reintegrating them into the hemisphere will eventually bring them more into the U.S. orbit. We've seen with other countries that we've normalized relationships with, such as Vietnam and other places. It doesn't transform the country overnight and doesn't eliminate.
Well, but if I may, John, let's stay here because I want to bring this back
away on that.
A little bit to Cuba, though. But is it not fair to say that maybe America's getting it right? Maybe the other Latin American countries want to bring Cuba into the sphere of influence here and bring them back into the 21st century, but with their various human rights violations, the fact that they have sponsored state terrorism in so many other places in South America, that it's not worth bringing them in, and they haven't earned the right to come back into this organization of states.
I've worked on human rights issues for many years all around the world. As I said, I think the human rights record there is deplorable. I think that when we have diplomats there and we have an embassy and we will be able to continually raise these human rights issues, we'll be able to get much better information about what's happening and to pressure Cuba. This is, as I said, the beginning of a process, and I think as we move towards normalization, improvements on human rights need to be part of that package. And I think that will be something that the president will emphasize in the coming, the last 2 years of his term.
You would then disagree with people like Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, who calls this basically another propaganda coup for the Castro brothers?
I don't see people that are saying that we caved in and gave a coup, a propaganda coup, or somehow legitimized or justified the Castro regime. I don't agree with that. I don't see that because when you're under pressure, when a country is a real threat and then you give them something, then you're caving into pressure. In this case, Cuba is no threat. They haven't been a threat to us since the 1960s on a security basis. They're not an economic threat. So this is something that should benefit both nations. They released a lot of political prisoners within Cuba. They've promised to do other things. Again, as you said, we should be skeptical about that. But I don't see this in any way as caving into the Castros.
You would then not agree with those also, I've only got about 30 seconds left, who say that if we would have waited 3 or 4 months, the Castros would have folded on their own because Venezuela certainly is bankrupt right now. So just wait them out.
When I used to work as a Senate staffer, I remember we would have briefings periodically because everyone wanted to know if Castro was going to die that year, and that was 15 years ago. We've been waiting for this regime to collapse for a long time. That doesn't look like it's going to happen, and we're more likely to see it collapse or gradually open up by using this new policy that the president has announced.
Let's see where it goes now, because obviously we're going to have to trust the Castro brothers in some way, shape, or form, and that is going to be difficult indeed. Trust but verify. John Bradshaw, I want to thank you so much for your time and your comments, and also a very Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Thanks, Ed. You too.
All right, take care. We're back after a short break to speak of another attack on human rights, the shocking rise of anti-Semitism around the world.